I want to say hi, welcome back, we're in person, and to those of you on Zoom, thank you for joining us for this hybrid piece as well. It's so exciting to learn all these new facets of technology. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know, right, when the weather's nice and we're in spring, we want to be outdoors, and I recognize that you guys chose to come inside tonight. So, my goal here is to give you some things to enjoy when you go back outside. For folks that are joining us on Zoom, I do have the chat feature open, and I'm going to be asking everybody, including you guys, to participate tonight. So you don't just get to sit back and listen. You get to talk to each other and shout out answers and all kinds of things like that as well. So folks on Zoom, you can put that right into the chat. All right, so this evening, my goal here is to get you tuned up, to get your ears ready to go back outside and listen to birds. How many of you consider yourself a birder? Awesome. How many of you keep a list of birds? All right. How many of you have bird feeders? Maybe not right now because right of bears and stuff like that, right? Okay, great. How many of you have traveled long distances to see birds? Okay. How many of you are happy with the short distance to step outside and see the birds that are already in your yard? Okay, awesome. So we're going to kind of play around with all kinds of different bird vocalizations and ways that birds make sound tonight. And I'm hoping that I'll give you some different strategies so that when you do spend some time outdoors over the next couple of months, you can listen in a different way and pick up on who's around you. So we'll start with this: how birds make sound. And there's a bunch of other ways that birds make sound other than the obvious, right? The beautiful sounds that come out of their mouths from their syrinxes, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But there's some other ways that birds make sounds as well, including this. How many of you have heard that before? Okay, awesome. Ruffed grouse, right? And we can mimic that. Oh my gosh, I don't want to smack the microphone here, but we can do that on our chest as well, right? So that sound that grouse are making is actually the sound of air, the vacuum that is created when the bird beats its wings against its body. So males will hop up on these drumming logs, and they do this really intense flapping in order to create this sound that carries through the forest, right? And sometimes it's so quiet, but you hear it, right? Because it almost hits you in the chest, that deep tone, right? And so the male is doing that to attract the female. Okay, how about another one? Anybody recognize this bird? Yeah? Yellow-bellied sapsucker. How many of you have been woken up by this bird? Yeah, maybe doing something like this. Very loud. So sapsuckers are looking for some place to drum on that will resonate and carry through the neighborhood. And oftentimes it's like a metal nail box like this, or a metal sign, maybe your metal roof or the side of your house, right? And so again, that is a territorial, I can't say it's a vocalization, but it's a territorial behavior that lets other sapsuckers know that this is this individual's space. All right, how about one more that has very little to do with vocalizations coming from the syrinx. Anybody recognize this gorgeous bird? Is that a woodcock? Close to woodcock. The cousin of the woodcock. This is snipe. Yeah, so snipe do that same sort of thing that woodcock do with the aerial displays, And the sound that we're hearing is actually the sound of the air going over a very specialized feather that creates that winnowing sound. I call it the woo-woo bird, the woo-woo bird that's out in wet meadows and fields. And we heard, what I love about this recording too, is that although the snipe is in the foreground, we also get an idea of what the soundscape of the habitat is like, right? That boom, boom from the bullfrogs in there that we were hearing. There was even drops of water that you could hear. So maybe the person that was recording was moving a little bit, and those drops of water were maybe coming off of their boots. That's what I imagine when I listen to that. So there are lots of different ways that birds are making sound and establishing territories and attracting mates. The one that we're really the most familiar with comes from true songbirds, right? So these are from our perching birds, our passerines, and they produce all of their different types of sounds, from the melodious sounds to the honks, using what's called a syrinx. It's very different than our larynx, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. This is wood thrush, which is one of those ethereal sounds that we hear in woodlands here across the Northeast. Anybody heard wood thrush yet this year? Yeah, they're just starting to arrive back here in the forests of Vermont. So while the syrinx is very similar to our own larynx, it's very different because it's got two sets of muscles. So you can see there on the right is a picture of the syrinx, and it sits just below the trachea and above the bronchus, above the lung. And then birds have these really big air sacs that they can fill up in order to push air through the syrinx. And the musculature around the syrinx kind of pinches and relaxes in order to create those different pitches and tones that we hear. All right, let's see. The other cool thing about the syrinx is that because there's two sets of muscles, the bird can actually harmonize with itself. And so when we think of the ethereal sounds of thrushes, that's actually what they're doing. They're singing one set of notes out one side and another set out the other side. The other cool thing that this allows the bird to do is to keep singing out of one side and take a breath through the other side. And that's why some of these songs can go on for so long. If you think about somebody like a house wren or a winter wren, where it's like, you're like, how do you keep doing that? And it's because they can take breaths because of the way their syrinx is built. It's really kind of cool. So I want to play you, let's see, we're going to listen to wood thrush right now. So I like to close my eyes when I listen to these pieces because I'm trying to imagine like where the sound is coming from. And I also like to think about how would I mimic that sound, and it's not easy for us to do that because we don't have a syrinx. So you can't create two notes at the same time. We can almost do that if you whistle and then hum. You get a little bit of the same kind of quality. That might be better for somebody like Veery, but that's as close as we can get to that. Now, there's this great scientist, his name's Donald Kreutzma. I'll show you one of his books a little bit later in the presentation. And what's cool that he has done is he's recorded birds in a way that he can break them down into two different sound tracks, and he can slow down the vocalization to kind of pull it apart and tease apart all the different parts to it, because it's really happening very quickly. So the next thing I'm going to play for you is the same wood thrush singing again, but it's going to pull apart the left side and the right side, and it's going to slow it down, okay? It's going to sound really different and weird, but fun. thrush is, like those sounds are magical, and it's because of the harmonies that they're able to create with themselves. So Donald Kreutzmann has a really amazing book that has CDs that you can break these things down and listen to them with headphones on, because they'll come in and out of either side of the headphone. So I've got a slide for that in just a minute. But before we go on, and folks on Zoom, this is where you get to open up your chat and participate, okay? So right now, I want you to think about what's your neighborhood soundtrack like right now? What's the soundscape like around you? And I want you to turn to someone next to you. And those of you who are on Zoom, feel free to put it in the chat. I want you to share the birds that are already part of your soundscape that you're hearing in your neighborhood. And maybe you don't know the name of the bird, and you're going to be like, it's the one that goes like this. So go ahead, feel free to mimic and talk to somebody next to you and share some of those birds. That is great. That's a great question. So maybe some of you have that bird in your neighborhood, crow, right? Okay. So I want to read to you some of the things that came up in the chat, and it was really cool because they're still coming up on the screen. So we can follow along with what folks are enjoying from the other side. So we have bubbling stream and peewee and goldfinches and others I don't know. Robin, grouse, red-winged blackbirds. Mike says chipping sparrows, white-throated sparrow. Let's see if I get raven and crow. Mike, that crow was for you to call everybody back in. How about from the room here? Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
I've had hummingbirds that were having a dog fight around the feeder, but I could swear they were also making a song, like that they were, do hummingbirds chirp?
Yes, so, and we're going to talk about the different types of vocalizations that birds make in just a minute. It's really interesting to think about, does a hummingbird sing? And maybe I'll come back to you and ask you that after I talk about all the different types of vocalizations there are. You guys had some interesting questions about other woodpeckers.
Yeah, woodpeckers versus the red-breasted sassafras.
Yeah. So do other woodpeckers drum? And yes, other woodpeckers drum. And then you asked me what?
They're also pecking for food.
Yeah, and those two sounds are very different, right?
Right.
So there are sounds that birds make when they're doing other behaviors, like foraging, right? I think of towhees that hop scratch in the leaf litter, and you hear it, and it sounds like something really big is coming through the leaf litter and the shrub scrub at you, but it's just this little tiny towhee. And then we have the vocalizations that are for territory and mating, and some other contact calls and things like that that we're going to talk about. How about other birds that are in your soundtrack right now?
Owl.
Kingfisher.
Kingfisher, yes. All right. If you're by the water.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Owls.
Owls. Barred owls.
Yes.
Oh, look at you.
And then we have little red hawks circling around them.
Nice. Oh, yes, right? Broad-winged hawks right now at the site that I was in the Catskills this weekend at a bird festival, and the really loud, high-pitched call from the broad-winged hawk. You'll notice I do a lot of impressions.
Good.
But it helps me remember. So in the privacy of your own home, or in the woods, right? It's okay to mimic birds, and it helps you kind of commit to memory what you're hearing, right? And sort out patterns and pauses and things like that. So I think even a bad impression is a good thing to try it, right? All right, super. I've got another set of things for us to play around with. All right, this is another interactive part. So I've been talking a little bit about soundscapes. And one of the things that I think we don't do a great job of when we're trying to learn birds is we're trying to learn a specific song or vocalization from a bird, right? And it's hard to isolate that out because there's all kinds of other things that are happening on the landscape that make sound, whether it's us as human beings or it's the wind through the trees or the babbling brook, right? We have to start to learn how to push some sounds out and allow other sounds to come back in. But soundscapes can also give us an idea of what the habitat is. So this time I'm going to play 3 different audio clips. And I want you to close your eyes and try to put yourself in the habitat that this audio piece comes from, okay? Here's the first one. All right, and folks on Zoom, feel free to put in the chat feature what habitat you think this might be. What do you folks think that are here?
Forest.
Forest.
But by a stream.
Forest by stream. Morning. Nice. Probably morning, right? There was a lot of vocalizations happening. All right, good job. And Bonnie said stream. Good job, Bonnie. Nice work. All right, let's try the next one. Again, folks on Zoom, feel free to type in what you think, where we are. Where are we now? Great. The moon on a lake. Good. You know what else I like? Whenever I play this, you hear people react to it. Right? All those. So it's taking you back, probably someplace that you've been where you experienced that before. So sound really has a way of connecting us deeply with place. All right, one more. This is the tricky one. Are you ready? Okay. Nice. So folks on Zoom, I have to let you know that when you guys type it in, it's really cool because it shows up on the screen here, and so we can see your reactions as well. It's wonderful. So that one, what do you guys think?
Marsh.
Yeah, marsh. Yeah?
What was that? The last, was that a duck?
I don't know.
Going
What do you
click,
think?
click, click, click,
Yeah, that
click.
last one?
Yeah.
I like your impression.
Oh, thank
Nice
you.
job. What do we think it could be? Could be a duck. Ducks don't really vocalize the same way perching birds do. If we were at a wetland, what else could make noises like that? There's a whole family of birds.
Rails.
Herons, rails, rails, coots, things like that. Super. So sometimes it's not always important to know who's singing or vocalizing, because it also makes us think about place and how soundscapes would change and shift as we go from place to place.
Bitter, Mike says bitter.
Yeah, there we go. Mike's gonna answer it. Thanks, Mike. Right? So thinking about all of those different types of sounds layered one on top of the other, one of the ways that we can start improving how we listen is to listen on a deeper level. And so part of this is building a practice around listening and listening to soundscapes as a whole and learning to pull sound in and out. So the things that I recommend to people the first thing is knowing your usual suspects. And that's why I asked you the question about what's the soundscape like in your neighborhood. And when you start to pay attention to what that soundscape is like, you get to know who's there. That's your set of usual suspects. And that's a great foundation to carry with you when you go to someplace like the wetland. Because all of a sudden you're like, ooh, this is different. I'm hearing something different here. Listen, chase, watch, identify. Spend some dirt time there, right? If we're just kind of cruising through, we don't have a chance to absorb all those sounds and sit with those sounds. So chase down the bird. Like if that is going, I'm gonna walk, change where I am and try to figure out who that is, watch and identify. And the great thing, I will tell you now, so there's a brand new app and everybody's been waiting for it. I'm gonna show you some slides towards the end. It's called Merlin. It's an app that's for free. It's by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And it has Shazam for birds now. So it has Sound ID on it. And you can basically tap a button and it comes up with a microphone and you tap that. It is so fun. How many of you have used it already? I see some, yay, good. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Here, my friends from Zoom, you can see this. But what it does is it makes birding more accessible and more open, and you can have success, right? So it also has an ID feature where it can walk you through how to identify a bird, and it taps into your geolocation. So it's only going to give you birds that are possible where you are. It's really fabulous, super fun to use. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about mnemonics and spectrograms, little words that you can put to names or vocalizations that you're hearing. Spectrograms give you a visual, something that you can look at, especially if you're a visual learner. Canceling out other sounds is a practice, is a skill to develop. I live in St. Albans, right near Route 89. And so I was really frustrated because I'm in the city and I'd rather have a house in the country and be surrounded by woodlands or wetlands or something. But the amount of birds that come through my yard is really amazing, especially during migration. And part of how I'm able to identify them is through vocalizations. But I have to black out the train that comes through and the sirens and the constant drone from Route 89. But over time, I've learned how to do that by kind of pushing and pulling sounds into my awareness, closer and further away. And then go birding with other birders or other people that know different types of birds. They will listen differently than you do, and they will give you great tips on how to listen the way that they listen, and maybe that's something that will work for you. Maybe it won't. But these are some of the tips that I use for deeper listening in order to get to know birds better. All right. Remember those 5 voices I was telling you? There are all kinds of different vocalizations. So there's this great book called What the Robin Knows by John Young, and he breaks down the voices of songbirds, perching birds, into these 5 different categories. Songs tend to be those more melodious, longer vocalizations that are used either for territory or for attracting a mate. Sometimes they're the same song, sometimes they're 2 different songs that mean 2 different things. And during this time of year, that's predominantly what we're hearing, are those territory and the mating songs. Then birds have these other vocalizations that they make. Contact call, which is a way to stay in touch with other birds while you're moving through the landscape. Food or begging. I think of the flickers in my yard. They come back and nest in the same cavity each year, and the babies are super, super loud. So we'll get into that in June. If it's incessant and it sounds like kids that just got home from school and really need a snack, those are probably baby birds. And then we have alarm calls. So things that are sharp and harsh, right? And really almost hit you. You can feel the difference in that vocalization. That is likely an alarm call. So let's play around with that a little bit. We can use one of the best usual suspects out there. How many of you, this is a usual suspect in your yard? Yes, black-capped chickadee, right? Super familiar bird. And this one, along with robin, both of those are actually two great birds to use as building a foundation for knowing voices. So chickadees, we're going to do attracting a mate in territory, we're going to do contact call, and we're going to do an alarm call that's kind of mashed up with contact. And I'm pretty sure you've all heard these before. So let's play the first one. This is the hey sweetie. That's for attracting a mate and establishing territory. You hear that as early as February when pairs start to form. All right, the next one is the classic contact call that goes, everybody sing it. Perfect. There we go. There we go. That's contact. All right. And then alarm call, basically what you want to do is drop the chick and go right to dee 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 and get a little bit more intense with it. And we have sharp seats in there too. So those are things that we can start to listen to with one of our usual suspects. And you could do this with any of your, cardinal might be a usual suspect, robin might be. And in the Merlin app, you'll be able to see song and call, and you'll be able to get to know each of those voices for those birds in your yard.
Who would they be alarmed about? People or?
Ooh, what could they be alarmed about? A hawk. A hawk.
Okay.
Ah, ah, ah! What do crows do? They're nest robbers, right? Okay. Weasel climbs up a tree. Squirrel climbs up a tree and goes for the cavity nesting. Chickadees are cavity nesters, and so they may go for the babies in the hole. Sometimes just skirmishes at the feeder. Dee 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 dee, right? Okay, they will get into it with each other as well, and so that's more of a conflict kind of vocalization, but very similar to alarm. One of the challenges that we have as human beings is describing what we hear, because we all describe it in very different ways. This weekend when I was at the Catskills, I was talking with another birder about trillers, birds that have a sound like, and there's whole sets of them: pine warbler, swamp sparrow, dark-eyed junco, worm-eating warbler. Did I say pine? I did say pine warbler. Chipping sparrow is another one. But the trill has different qualities. And she said that pine was a dry trill. And I was like, no, that's a watery trill. And so we had learned it two different ways, but it worked for her, right? So she had been able to kind of pan those out. So I'm curious, what kind of words would you use to describe different types of sounds or bird sounds? So think about categories of sound. I just gave you one, trill, that might help you figure out who's who. And this is where you get to turn to each other and brainstorm with one another some words. Or for those of you who are on Zoom, go ahead and type it in the chat box. This time, don't look at the Zoom people's answers, you guys. And maybe Zoom people hold back for a few minutes while they're talking. All right? Think about different qualities of sound. There we go. All right. The answers are coming in from the Zoom team there. We've got melodic, burbling, bluebird, hoarse, sore throat tanager, deep croak raven. How about some of these? Ooh, two. We got Sarah's coming in, trilling, sing song. Anybody have any other words that work?
Cacophony.
Cheap, chirp, cacophony.
I'm English, we say cacophony.
You say cacophony. All right.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes, cacophony, whistling nasally. Now I'm just going to speak in a British accent the rest of the night. What else? Anything else?
Honk.
Whistling, honk, something that's nasally. Good. All right. So this is why it's so hard, right? I mean, I think when we learn birds in the little kid books, it's like cheep and tweet and chirp, right? but that doesn't give us a lot, right? So what's been great is we're starting to kind of find ways to describe what we hear. And there's some really wonderful new books out there. Nathan Pipelo actually defines 7. He says whistle, hoot, cooing, ticking sounds, which is a snap or a knock of the beak, burry, buzzy, noisy sounds, meaning a distorted sound, nasal sounds, polyphonic sounds. That's a lot of different types of sounds, right? And what I try to do is this. I try to break it down into some of these different kind of categories. The sound quality, what do I hear? Is it buzzy? Anybody make a buzzy sound? Perfect. Come on, be brave. Do it. There we go. Can you trill? Some people can, some people can't. Can you whistle? So clear would be something that you could whistle, okay? So like chickadee, right? That's a clear note if I can whistle it, okay? If I can hoot it, I think of that as clear as well, like a mourning dove or an owl. Does it rise or does it fall? What's the pitch trend? Is it going up or is it coming down? Right? Down. And then the number of sections. So if I do that again, 3, right? So we can count sections, and then we can see if it repeats, right? And then there's like, they wait. Sometimes somebody counter sings back. So if I go, a little chickadee way across the forest would go. Like, cue the chickadee in the back. Right? So we have that counter singing that happens. That's not necessarily repetition, but there are some birds where they're going to repeat a phrase and then do a different phrase, and then they'll repeat that first phrase again. And those are ways that you can start to be like, ooh, I'm hearing this many pieces, it repeats it twice, and then it does this other thing. Okay? So those are ways that we can start to listen. And these are probably my favorites, right? Buzzy, clear, trill, and is it rising or falling? Those are great places to start. And we're gonna start. Are you ready? All right, I'm gonna ask you the question, buzzy, trill, or clear? We're gonna go with 3 different types of sparrows. These are all sparrows that we can find here in Vermont. White-throated sparrow, actually they're all kind of in different habitats too. White-throated sparrow is more forest, chipping sparrow is more field forest edge, and Savannah sparrow is like grassland field, okay? So I'll play the first vocalization of the white-throated sparrow, and you get to say buzz, trill, or clear, or type buzz, trill, or clear. All right, here we go.
Clear.
Yes, there we go. Good job, Bonnie. Bonnie got it too. Lovely, right? Does this one go down? I know somebody's outside responding to us. That crow came in. I noticed some people doing this with their hands. That's another great way, that this is a kinesthetic way to put those things in your head. You're conducting. Sometimes they go down, sometimes they go up, white-throated sparrow. So feel free to conduct as you like. All right, here we go. Here's the next one.
True.
Ooh, and Barbara's saying buzzy. Okay.
Chipping.
So, chipping. It's a chipping. So this is chipping sparrow. This is considered a trill. You could say it's a buzzy trill. All of those were the same species of bird. Little bit of variations. The males do that to be more attractive to the female. Female might like a more buzzy quality to her chipping sparrow trill. Who knows? Now, the way that we really fine tune our ears to the difference between buzzy and trill is to have lots of experiences outside listening deeply. So, go to a grassland and you'll hear something very different from savanna sparrow. Mm. So this is actually considered buzzy. Yeah. So we have some introductory notes, this little tip-tip-tip-tip-tip-tip-tip. A lot of grassland birds have a buzzy quality to them because later in the summer we have lots of insects there and it kind of all blends with that soundscape. So now, your buzzy may be my trill and my trill may be your buzzy, as long as you sort those out for yourself, okay? So, great things to start to listen to. All right, let's try another one. Let's compare some birds in the thrush family. We have veery, which is a woodland thrush, lower elevations. And we have Swainson's thrush, which is another woodland thrush, but higher elevations, where there are more conifers. Okay, so the question here is rising or falling? Ready? Okay. I'm watching you. Awesome. Rising. Okay.
Ask a quick question. Is
Yeah.
that the one you hear when it's just getting dark at night?
Yes. So thrushes, like many of the songbirds, the most active time for vocalization is dawn and dusk. Dawn is like, wake up, I'm gonna let you know this is my territory, I am here, come and meet me, right? And at dusk, it's like, this is my space, I'm coming back, I'll see you tomorrow, kind of thing, right? So those 2 times a day tend to be the most intense in terms of bird song. Okay, good job, Veery. All right. You know what? I'm realizing I have these backwards. So this is the Veery. Veery is down, and Swainson's thrush is up. Let's do it again. So, and I'll tell you why my head clicked that way. So you remember when I said Veery is lower elevation? Lower is down. And Swainson is higher elevation, and that one goes up. Okay, so look at the Veery, and let's listen to both of them again. Let's see if I can get back. Yes, I can. I just need to flip-flop their pictures, don't I? Okay, going up, Swainson's thrush, that's the one on the right, high elevation. And then Veery is going down. We have more experience, you probably are hearing the Veery if you're at a lower elevation.
We're in the mountains, we hear no thrush.
There we go, Swainson's. Oh my gosh, I'm jealous because like I got a hype for that one. All right, let's try comparing similar songs. So we all know American Robin, or maybe we don't, so let's play that. So it's very sing-songy, it's clear, I could whistle that if I wanted to, and there's a little bit of a pause in between. One of the other ways that we can get to know birdsong is by comparing similar songs. And I was talking about this earlier with comparing different types of trillers. What I like to do is listen to all the trillers together so that I can start to train my brain to listen to the differences with them. And we could do that same thing with this other set of forest birds, including rose-breasted grosbeak, scarlet tanager, and Baltimore oriole. So let's play rose-breasted grosbeak. And maybe you can tell me how it sounds a little bit different than the American robin.
It's a little more continuous.
Longer phrase.
Yeah, longer phrasing, good.
Like it talks faster.
And what?
Like it talks faster.
Like it talks faster. How many of you are familiar with Julia Child? And the way she used to talk, that's what I think of when I think of rose-breasted grosbeak. I think of Julia Child. And it's this very excited, right? I love it. So that works for me. And so when I hear Julia Child in the woods, I'm like, oh, rose-breasted grosbeak. All right, let's try another one. Right, you just make up what works for you. There's no rules.
That was rising.
Yeah,
It's buzzier.
Longer
Buzzier.
pause.
Longer pause.
This one talks
Individual
slower.
notes.
Back and down and up. Buzzy quality to it, okay? Longer, right? It's not, the robin is very short. I've got a phrase and then a pause and then a phrase and a pause and a phrase and a pause. Did you hear the chick-burr in there? Oh, let's play that again. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. Okay, so rose-breasted grosbeak is considered a robin with singing lessons. Scarlet tanager is a robin with a sore throat. And you throw this little throat clearing in there, that chipper, right? And then I don't know what we call, maybe you guys can come up with something for Baltimore Oriole, but this one is similar but different at the same time.
It's got more words.
Yeah,
More words! That's good.
you put that one to work.
It's a robin with a
Bigger
better vocabulary.
Vocabulary.
Thank you. That's so good, right? And I'm going to try it out with you, and then I'm going to chirp, and then I'm going to say another thing, and then boop, right? So there's this more chattery quality to it. Great job, you guys. Really good. All right. Now, another way that we can do this, right, and we've been talking about phrases and sections of notes, we're noticing different patterns. You guys notice pauses and the duration of all of those. Some were longer, right? And the repetition. What's great is we can start to use things like spectrograms to get this visual component in there along with the vocalization. So somebody like white-throated sparrow that we listened to before, the mnemonics, the words that we might put to it to help us have a handle on it might be something like whistle, whistle, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Whistle, whistle, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And I'm going to do it one more time because it says 3 times. Whistle, whistle, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Or you might put something like the poor Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody mnemonic to it. And if you listen and watch the spectrogram at the same time, so the top one is when a white-throated sparrow is doing an ascending song where the second half of the song rises, and the bottom one is when the second half of the song falls. So I'm pretty sure this recording has both. So let's listen. That one dropped a lot, right? So So again, that was one individual just switching it up to sound more attractive and to stand out from the other males that may be nearby. And there's that, oh, sweet Canada, 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 or poor Sam, Peabody, 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 or whatever you make up for yourself works. I had a kid once on a walk when we were listening to red-winged blackbirds, and I was like, yeah, the red-winged blackbird goes conklary. He was like, no, it doesn't. And the teacher got all upset. She was like, don't talk to her like that. Don't, shh. And I was like, no, go ahead. Tell me what you hear. And he goes, well, that bird is clearly saying, Burger King, Burger King. And I was like, great, that works. That will stay in your head. You go ahead and use that. So please give yourself permission. The field guide is going to tell you something, but if it doesn't work for you, find something that works for you, right? So if, hey, sweetie, doesn't work for you, maybe cheeseburger works for you. Maybe something else works, okay? So here's hey, sweetie, and the spectrograms for it. Sometimes it helps to see that visual piece. And sometimes it gets really fun and you can see the sound quality in there. Look at this. So we've got like a very burry vocalization, whereas, right, chickadee were these nice whistled notes which come out straight on the spectrogram because of the frequency and the pitch. And now we get Phoebe, who says its name and then forgets its name, so it has to ask it and be like, is that my name, Phoebe? So it comes up, Phoebe, Phoebe, Phoebe. Can you tell the difference between the two by looking at the spectrogram?
No.
Yeah, okay, so the Phoebe is this first one, the Phoebe, here, I'll play it again. First one, second one, first one, second one. Now, it takes time. You're not gonna master this just tonight with me. You gotta do a little bit of dirt time and you gotta do a little bit of homework. So the way that you can do that is buy tons of books. So the app that I'm gonna show you is free. These do cost money, but they're great books. So there's a Nathan Pyplow book. This is new within the past 5 years. Field Guide to Bird Sounds of Eastern North America, and this has beautiful spectrograms in it, and he's the one that has broken down sound vocalizations into all of these different categories, which is really lovely. Donald Kruzma, the second book and the fourth book, The Singing Life of Birds, is the one where he writes this whole incredible chapter on thrushes and that ethereal quality and the harmonizing, and he breaks things apart and slows them down. I mean, if you really want to hurt your brain, go for that book. He wrote the one that's second here, Birdsong for the Curious Naturalist, of Your Guide to Listening. It's a little more, it's a little more accessible. The other one is very science dense. This one is great because it gives you things to try to do. Here's this, go try to experience it. And there's a whole bunch of different audio files that come with that book that you can access online to look and listen at spectrograms and things. But I love it because there's lots of great challenges in it. If you're into warblers and you're trying to master warbler song, which I know a lot of folks really love during this time of year, the Warbler Guide is for you. That's another one that will hurt your head because there's so much information in it. But it's really fabulous because, again, it breaks down all of those different vocalizations and types and gives you spectrograms for them. Now, the most accessible one is Merlin, right? Please go home and play with this because it's really incredible. This new button here with the sound ID is wonderful because it will give you a little list of the birds And if you look over on the far right of the screen there, you're going to get a live spectrogram. And you can look up a bird that you'd like to learn more about, and you can hit the sound thing. You can see in the middle column with the picture of the bird, right at the top it says sounds. That's how you can learn the sound for that little winter wren. But the sound ID is really incredible and enjoyable. It helps you kind of know who to look for, right? And where to look in your yard. All right, one more thing. Now it's quiz time. Are you ready? Okay. So folks online, please feel free to type in what you think this bird is. And we're just gonna have a little fun with who's singing. And folks in here, you can call it out. And it will be revealed in time. Are you ready? Here we go.
Cardinal.
Good job. All right. That is Northern Cardinal, and we can put different types of mnemonics to this. Purdy, purdy, P2, P2, P2. I have those in my neighborhood. I spend a lot of time trying to mimic them with my kids. It's good fun. So clear notes that slur up and they slur down. Both the male and female in this species sing, and by the way, whole different presentation. More female birds sing than previously thought, and the short reason why is because there are more women in science now asking different questions. And most of the lead authors on research around female birdsong right now are women. Super cool. Okay, so go out there and listen. Maybe you'll discover a female who's singing. All right, who's singing now? These are all, dark-eyed junco. This is a Vermont bird. Down in lower elevations, although they're starting to leave to go up into the higher elevations to breed right now, so they will be gone from my yard very soon. But this is considered a slow trill. When I was learning trillers, and I have to relearn them every year, honestly, looking at their spectrogram really helps. And so you can put those two together and then close your eyes and listen and picture that. It's really nice. All right, let's try this one. Close. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and Barbara said catbird too. Great. So this one is in that mimic family. Did you hear the doubles, right? Drop it, pick it up, plant it, cover it up. So it does doubles. So this is brown thrasher, and they have a pattern of twos. And there's the pick it up, whatever you want it to be. And sometimes they throw somebody else's vocalization in there and they double it. Super fun. Catbirds pick up whoever else is in your neighborhood and add that to their repertoire. The more diverse a repertoire a catbird has, the more desirous that male is. And that is who's going to get all the lady catbirds. All right, how about this one? She's like, who, me? What? I wasn't trying to throw you off. Okay, right? And you get to that point too, you're like, enough! I can't hear anything else because you keep going. So Eastern chipmunk, right? We have to remember that there are other animals vocalizing within the soundscape that we are experiencing. Remember back to the snipe and the frogs, right? And we have toads trilling right now, long trills. And later in the season, we'll get to gray tree frogs, which go. So it's like this broken trill, right? We have all kinds of other things that can get added to whatever we're listening to. And so don't forget not to get fooled by these cuties.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Is there any research, I feel like I heard once about how different species learn each other's, especially maybe territorial or alarm calls, like they are talking, and sometimes when I'm walking with my dog, I think they're talking about us.
Yeah, they might be. Yep.
They're just concerned, and a bird will understand that
Yes.
as an alarm call.
As an alarm call. Chipmunks actually have an alarm that's specific to aerial predators, and it's very high pitched. And other birds will pick up on that. A lot of our resident birds, like black-capped chickadees and titmice, the other birds will pay attention to those resident birds' alarm sounds to pay attention for either an aerial predator or a ground predator. Yep. Super interspecies communication. All right, ready for this one?
Unbelievable.
That's a really cool sound.
Okay, let's just listen to that one more time because it's so fun.
No, right?
There we go.
That would scare me.
That would scare you, yeah. I'm trying to perfect the impersonation of this one.
Those kids who play on drums.
So fun. Imagine that carrying across like a pond from a wetland on the other side of the pond, right? It almost hits you like grouse. You did this. Ooh, why?
I love it. I just love that.
You just love that bird.
I love that sound.
And they're very hard to see, right? Because they're colored so well. And sometimes they do this thing where they just sway, right? While they're in the grasses. So it's hard to see them. But that sound cue, you're not going to miss that at all. All right, and we've got one more. I had to throw one warbler in. So this is common yellowthroat. This is a great core warbler to learn because it's a shrub scrub species and tends to be down low. And so they do, and my sister has this thing that she does every time she hears one. We'll be out birding together and she'll just go like this. And I'll be like, okay, yeah, it's a common yellowthroat. So witchity, 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 witch. Witchy, 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 witch. So she's got like a hand motion that goes with that for her. So here, let's go back so that you guys can grasp all these things that we talked about tonight. You know, we started with really asking, I asked you, who are your usual suspects? Who's in your neighborhood? Who's part of your soundtrack right now? Those are the birds that you want to start with, and start playing around with Merlin with them. See if you can make predictions before you step outside and you say, the first bird that I'm going to hear today is, right? And see if you can get to know who's singing. That bird that wakes you up first thing in the morning, is it the yellow-bellied sapsucker drumming, or is it American robin that's doing that dawn song? Listen, chase, watch, identify. We've got great tools, whether it's your field guide or I can't stop talking about the Merlin app. It's there to help you, and it's a really great tool. Mnemonics and spectrograms, make up your own. If it doesn't work for you, whatever's in the field guide or whatever's been shared with you, make up your own. Use those spectrograms that are in Merlin or in the field guides to your advantage. Learn how to cancel out other sounds and listen without judgment. This is one of the things that I do in my slow birding courses and workshops. We learn how to deep listen together by sitting in space and learning to let go of the sound of the motorcycle that goes by and allowing the bird sounds to come in. And so instead of being frustrated that we're not in a perfect, pristine environment to hear birds, we can truly start to appreciate what's right outside our door and connect with those birds. And then share your joy and your knowledge and your challenges by getting together with others. Invite somebody over for a cup of coffee and say, come listen in my yard today. Or at the end of the day, maybe you're having a beer or a glass of wine or a cup of tea, and sit at dusk and listen as well.
Can I give a
Oh.
little, I thought it was off the American. Can I give a little pitch, a little?
Yeah.
Say, on Saturday mornings, at Kildene, there's a birding group and they meet at 7 o'clock and they'll be meeting this Saturday.
All right, so Kildene, if you're in the Manchester area, has 7 a.m. bird walks. I'm just reiterating that for all the people on Zoom. And of course, you can reach out to me and you can take a slow birding class. I teach them online. I'm doing stuff in person now. First Friday of every month at noon, I do a live guided slow birding sit spot. And it's really been a lot of fun. I do group and private outings, and of course, I'm here, I do presentations and keynotes as well. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And next year, my new course for next year will be all about listening in a deeper way. So I'm really excited to play around with these ideas that I shared with you tonight even more. I would love to open it up to questions. If you'll give me a minute, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll see if we can pull up anybody that might be online. Let's see if I do this. To gallery view. I'm going to close this. Hey, here we go. So let's start with some questions in here, and then folks on Zoom, you can either put something in the chat or you can unmute and ask your question as well. Yes?
Here, can you do one of your owls?
Can I do one of my owl calls? Yes, I can. So, who knows the mnemonic for barred owl?
Who cooks for you?
Yeah, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So you have to have like an owl, like kind of face and sound. So you have to like embody the owl and get your owl face on. And then. So I'm gonna hoot like that, and I don't want to be left alone on my territory without a mate. So I'm hoping you will call back. Let's try it. And those of you that are on Zoom, I'm listening even though you're muted, so give it a shot. All right, here we go. Nice. There we go. Now the female, the ooh-all on the end, she puts a little vibrato into it. So you can actually hear the difference between male and female. So let's see if I can do it. So it gets a little bit of like, little vibration in there, okay? Somehow we can't hear your bird calls. Oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe
I think you're on mute.
I am on mute, but I'm not supposed to unmute because that is supposed to be picking me up, unfortunately. Okay, somehow we can't hear your bird calls. Lucy, can you type in if you can hear me speaking still? I'm curious. Okay, good, there we go. All right, other questions? Yes, in the back.
On March 19th, my wife and I walked outside and heard a bird song, and we've been birding for a few summers now, and it sounded exactly like a chestnut-sided warbler, and we both looked at each other and said, "Oh, but it couldn't have been, right?" And if it couldn't have been in mid-March, what could it have been?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's the, oh, yeah, March is too early, right? Warblers aren't coming back at that point in time. Unless it was a rogue warbler that stayed
And we heard it more than once, but we didn't ever see it.
or arrived back.
Or them, you know, because we were walking, so.
So here's how I start to figure these things out. I start to think about the habitat that I'm in and the time of year, and then I make a list of birds. And I think about what's possible in that area. And there's all kinds of different, right? We talked about 5 different voices and vocalizations, and so then you have to start to pick some of those apart. The please, please, please to meet you of chestnut-sided warbler, like the experience that I had at the Catskills this weekend, there's other birders that hear something different in that. And so I'm curious, like the other thing I would start to look at is what sounds like that, what has that same pattern. And then the next thing I would do is I'd record it and get a recording and send it to me or send it to Cornell. Or put it on the Vermont Birding Plus Facebook page, because there's a community of observers and birders there that can help with those kind of things. And then maybe invite me over and I'll and I will listen with you. Awesome. Any other questions? Thoughts?
This is helpful.
Do birds choose their mates based slowly on musical ability?
No, because there's a whole bunch of other things that kind of go into that. So some females observe other behaviors that males display. So for example, cowbirds do this really weird like tip and bow thing, right? And they will look at the quality of that motion as well and decide whether or not that male is worthy. Other birds, like I think about mallards, and go look at male mallards. And the male mallards that have a robust yellow, bright beak right now are the ones that are the best fed. They know how to forage and find really good food. And that stands out to a female as well. So there's all these things that kind of go into it. So then there's courtship behaviors that happen, and the female can accept or reject based on the quality of that courtship display. The tippy cowbirds, the cedar waxwings do this side hop thing. I saw it in my backyard the other day where they were eating blossoms from one of the oak trees in the backyard. And one bird would pull pieces apart from the blossoms and land on a horizontal branch and hop next to the other one and pass that little blossom piece to the other bird. And the other bird would hop away with the piece in its mouth and then come back again and pass it off to the other bird. So male picks, female receives, hops away. Those two birds you can't tell apart because they're not sexually dimorphic, meaning they have the same plumage. But he picks, passes, she receives, hops back and forth. They do this passing back and forth. And then she'll either eat it or drop it, and they'll either go into coitus or she'll fly away. So all these little things that we can watch. And sure, it starts with the territorial song, and then the attraction comes in with the mating song. And then when they see each other, there's these courtship displays, and it's different for each species what they do to impress each other and to accept each other. So deeper listening leads to deeper observing, which leads to this deep knowing of the birds that are right outside our door. Yes.
Are there any apps or sites where you can test yourself on bird sounds?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was just doing this the other day. So I am guiding some trips for the Acadia Birding Festival this year, which is up in Maine. And so it's all coastal birds. And I'm like, oh, it's been a long time since I've done coastal birds. And eBird has quizzes. So eBird is another platform that birders use to track the different types of birds that they see and hear. It's a way of keeping lists, but it's also a way of contributing to science. And the great thing that you can do is you can type in your area. There's a place You go under Explore, and then you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the Explore page, and it says Quiz Me. You're like, yes. So you can pick a place. So what I did for all the trips that I'm doing is I picked the place, the town that those sites were in, and I said, quiz me, and it'll either quiz you by photo or by sound. And so that's a great way to do it. There's another great, there's a bunch of quiz. Again, I can't remember the other quiz site that's online. If I remember it, I'll send it to Gloria, and she can post it or send it to folks. But there are a number of things out there where you can quiz yourself and get points and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, if you're into gaming, right, which the younger generation is, they've gamified that way of learning birdsong too, which is really cool. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion or a rule of thumb about who to feed? Is it good for them? Should they be foraging?
So our bird feeders are just a small portion of what birds eat naturally. And when there's natural food available, they're going to go for that. So even in the deep winter, what we're providing for them is only like a quarter of their diet. Now lately with avian flu, there's 2 types that are kind of hitting the region pretty hard. There's like the feeder-borne avian flu that is transmitted mainly through finches. We really need to keep our feeders clean, so it's, you know, it's taking them down once a week and doing a, you know, bleaching and letting them dry and all of that, and that can keep feeder birds safe. The other one is the one that's affecting poultry and raptors, so waterfowl, wild waterfowl, domestic, and then domestic birds, and unfortunately is affecting some of our eagles in the state. We may have heard some of the reports of eagles dying already this year, which is really unfortunate. So I think, right, if you're in bear country, you're taking your feeders down. Even in my city, St. Albans City, last year was the first year in like 40 years, according to people that have been there much longer than me, we had a black bear come across 89 somehow, come into the forest park that's right outside the city and is hitting feeders. It came back again this year. So now I don't even say, oh, we're fine, because we're in the city and we're we're chopped by 89, so nothing's going to come across. So I think keeping feeders down in these types of communities is really good. And then planting natural native species and letting the caterpillars eat those native species. Caterpillars are the things that songbirds are feeding their young. It's the main protein source. And so the more native plants we have that are being eaten by native insects, the better the protein buffet we're providing for songbirds. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to feed birds. Yeah.
We have 3 robin nests every year in the same place. Right. Would that be the same birds coming back?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's likely that they are the same or from that same family unit. Yeah. We had robins nest in the same spot they nested in 2 years ago where the crows took them out. And they skipped a year, and then some other pair, and I'm hoping it's not the same pair, because I'm like, come on, you guys, and they got hit again. They got hit again this year. So, yeah.
Is there any way to discourage the crows or help protect the nesting sites?
Protect the nesting sites?
Well,
So-
I have something building. I knew what it was last year. I've forgotten that it builds a mud nest underneath my porch, on my front porch, underneath the eave. And something tore it down. It had 3 or 4 eggs and it tore it down and lost the nest. And I don't know if it's the same bird. I think it's the same species. It's the same style of nest.
Yeah.
And I don't know if if I could like hang a trailing plant, or if I could, I don't know how to help protect its little spot there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was a crow, a cat, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's hard. And one of the reasons why birds like to nest near us is because it does sometimes offer them a bit of protection.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it can be exposure if there's cats around. I think trying not to disturb them wherever they are is the first part, not drawing it. We draw attention if we go and visit the nest every day. The crows notice that. Like crows are like, oh, what's going on here? They notice things.
Okay.
And so when we give those birds the space, then they're better protected. I think the other piece is trying to figure out, are there other places that they could nest where I could provide a platform? We have robin and phoebe platforms that we built for our yard. There's patterns for them online. They're really simple. But it's basically if you have a bird that's nesting someplace that's not convenient, you can provide another platform and encourage them to nest in another spot. But part of this is what I tell my kids, like we start singing stuff from the Lion King, right? It's like part of the circle of life, right? If every baby bird was born, we'd be in trouble. We'd be in trouble as people, I think. Yeah, so hard lessons, but things we can do to help out in that way. Yeah.
Have you observed, I know that there's some sort of like eye, it's like a conjunctivitis.
Yeah, that's the avian flu
Is that what
for
the avian
feeder
flu is?
birds. Yeah, and so if you see birds with gummy eyes, or they're really lethargic on the feeder and they're sitting there, they're not moving, even when you go up to the window or up to the feeder, that's time to take your feeders down, typically for 2 weeks to get all the birds to leave. And then you want to clean up under the feeder and you want to scrub the feeders down really good before you put them back out again. Yeah, good. All right. Thank you all so much for coming out. I love a good follow-up story, so feel free to reach out to me at birddiva@gmail.com if you have great stories to tell. I will do a happy dance with you if you're like, I identified my first warbler by song, or I heard a robin alarm call for the first time. I love those emails, so feel free to send me your stories too. Take care, you guys. Have a great night. Thanks to everybody online as well. Be in touch. Hopefully our paths will cross in person.